Mom, I'm back. He saved me. She looked at the human and said, You brought me back to my mother. The stars looked cold and distant as Captain Sarah Chen stared out of her ship's window. Around her ship, pieces of metal and broken parts floated in space like sad reminders of what used to be a happy place. This was Haven's Rest, a peaceful colony where the Zephyrian people lived simple, quiet lives. Now it was nothing but wreckage and empty space. Captain, we're getting closer to the asteroid belt, said Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez from his seat at the controls. His voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the anger hiding underneath. Tom had seen too many places like this, colonies destroyed by slavers, who took people like they were just things to sell. Any signs of the slaver station? Sarah asked, checking her scanner. The small screen showed dots of light moving in the darkness. Each dot could be a ship, a rock, or something worse. Double quotes, yes, Captain. It's big and well protected. They have at least 20 guard ships around it, Tom replied. He turned to look at Sarah. The other species said we should not come here. They said it's dangerous and costs too much money. Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy smile. That's the difference between them and us, Tom. We don't leave people behind. The human rescue ship Morning Hope was not the biggest or strongest ship in space, but it carried something that the fancy ships of other species did not have, a crew that cared more about saving lives than following safe rules. Dr. Emily Watson, the ship's doctor, came to the bridge carrying her medical bag. Her red hair was tied back, and her green eyes showed determination. I've prepared the medical bay for survivors, she said. But Sarah, the reports say most of the prisoners might be children. Sarah felt her heart grow heavy. Children were always the hardest to save because they were so scared and hurt. We'll save every single one we can, she promised. Captain, I'm reading life signs on the slaver station, called out Specialist Jake Miller from his position at the sensor controls. Jake was young but very good at finding things that others missed. I count about 200 beings. Most of them are in the lower levels. That's where they keep the prisoners, Tom said with disgust, like animals in cages. Sarah stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Around her, her crew worked quietly and efficiently. These were good people who had chosen to risk their lives for strangers. Other species often called humans crazy for doing such things. But Sarah was proud of this craziness. All right, everyone, listen up, Sarah said. We're going to go in fast and quiet. Tom, take us around the big asteroid. We'll hide behind it until we're ready to move. Jake, keep watching those sensors. Emily, be ready for anything. The ship moved silently through space, using the asteroid's shadow to stay hidden. As they got closer, Sarah could see the slaver station clearly. It was ugly and dark, built like a prison floating in space. Small ships moved around it like insects around a lamp. Captain, I'm picking up something strange, Jake said, his voice excited. There's a very young life sign in section C7. The readings are different. Scared, Sarah's training told her to focus on getting all the prisoners out safely. But something in Jake's voice made her pay attention. Different how? It's a child. But the brain patterns show extreme fear. More than the others. Like something really bad happened to this one. Emily moved closer to look at Jake's screen. If a child is that traumatized, they might not survive the rescue. We need to be very careful. Sarah made her decision quickly. Jake, mark that location. We go there first. 20 minutes later, Sarah and her team were floating in spacesuits outside the slaver station. They had cut through the outer wall using quiet laser tools. The station's inside was dark and smelled terrible. They could hear the sounds of scared voices echoing through the metal halls. This way, whispered Tom, following the map on his armed computer. They moved through narrow corridors, past locked doors with small windows. Behind those doors, Sarah could see faces of different alien species, all looking hopeless and afraid. When they reached section C7, Sarah's heart nearly broke. In a small, dark room sat a little Zephyrian girl. She had blue skin that should have been bright and shining, but now looked pale and sick. Her large, silver eyes stared at nothing. and she was so thin that Sarah could see her bones. "Hey there, little one," Sarah said softly. Kneeling down, the Zephyrian child looked up, and Sarah saw fear so deep it made her want to cry. The child tried to speak, but her translator device was broken. She said something in her own language, then tried again in broken English. "Fine, Mama, please." "Fine, Mama." Emily quickly scanned the child with her medical device. "She's very weak, but she'll live." "Sarah, her name tag says Kira." "Kira," Sarah repeated gently. The little girl looked at her with surprise, as if no one had said her name kindly in a very long time. "Kira, we're here to help you. We're going to get you out of here." "Mama?" Kira asked, hope filling her voice. Sarah felt her heart break a little more. She looked around the room, but there was no adult Zephyrian here. The mother was somewhere else, maybe on another ship, maybe on another world, maybe worse. "We'll find your mama," Sarah promised, even though she had no idea how they would do it. "I promise we'll find her," as they carried Kira and the other prisoners back to their ship. Sarah knew this mission had become something bigger than a simple rescue. She had made a promise to a scared little girl, and humans never broke promises like that. Tom helped load the last of the survivors onto their ship. "Captain, we got everyone from the station." But he paused. Kira's mother wasn't there. Sarah looked at the little Zephyrian girl, who was now sleeping in Emily's arms, even in sleep. Kira looked scared and alone. "Then we keep looking," Sarah said simply. "We don't leave families broken." As the morning hope flew away from the destroyed slaver station, Sarah knew their real mission was just beginning. They had saved these people from a terrible place, but for Kira, the rescue would only be complete when she was back in her mother's arms. "Captain," Jake said quietly, "the other species are right. Finding one person in the whole galaxy is almost impossible." Sarah smiled as she watched Kira sleep peacefully for the first time in months. "Jake, that's what makes us human. We try to do impossible things, especially when they matter most." The human outpost New Dawn was buzzing with activity. Dr. Marcus Webb, a tall man with kind eyes and gentle hands, sat beside little Kira in the medical bay. She had been with them for 3 days now, but she still jumped at every sudden sound and refused to eat unless someone sat with her. "It's okay, Kira," Marcus said softly in the Zephyrian language he had been learning. "You're safe here." He had studied many alien languages, but learning Zephyrian quickly was challenging even for him. Kira looked up at him with her big silver eyes. She was drawing on a piece of paper with colored pencils, something Dr. Webb had given her to help her feel better. But instead of happy pictures that children usually drew, her drawings were all dark and scary. Captain Sarah Chen walked into the medical bay, carrying a cup of warm milk that Zephyrian children loved. "How's she today, Marcus?" "Better than yesterday, but still very frightened," Marcus replied quietly. "She keeps asking about her mother. But every time we try to ask where her mother might be, she starts crying." Sarah sat down next to Kira and offered her the milk. The little girl took it with both hands and smiled, the first real smile Sarah had seen from her. "Any news about the search?" Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. "Tom and Jake have been checking every database they can find. No record of Kira's mother among the rescued prisoners from other stations. It's like she disappeared completely." The doors to the medical bay opened, and 3 alien officials walked in. Sarah recognized them immediately. Ambassador Vex from the Galactic Council, Commander Zera from the Altarian Defense Force, and Trade Minister Colin from the Centauri Alliance. They all looked very serious and somewhat annoyed. "Captain Chen," Ambassador Vex said in his cold, mechanical voice, "we need to discuss the situation with these rescued prisoners." Sarah stood up slowly. She didn't like the tone in Vex's voice. "What situation?" "The logical situation," Commander Zera replied, her blue skin shimmering under the lights. "We have prepared proper refugee camps for all the survivors. They will be fed, housed, and given work assignments based on their skills." "That sounds reasonable," Sarah said carefully. "But what about their families?" Trade Minister Colin stepped forward. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which Sarah knew meant he was irritated. "Captain, You must understand the mathematics. There are over 2 billion beings currently displaced in this galaxy. The resources required to search for scattered family members would be enormous. We've calculated the costs, Ambassador Vex added, to search for one missing individual across multiple star systems would require approximately 50,000 credits and 6 months of dedicated ship time. The logical conclusion is that such searches are wasteful and inefficient. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. So you're saying we should just give up on finding their families? Not give up, Commander Zara corrected. We are being practical. The survivors will be cared for. They will have new lives. Searching for people who may already be dead is not logical. Little Kira, who had been listening even though she couldn't understand all the words, suddenly started crying. She dropped her drawing and ran to Sarah, wrapping her small arms around Sarah's legs. Dr. Webb picked up Kira's drawing and looked at it carefully. His eyes widened with surprise. Sarah, look at this. The drawing showed a woman with blue skin standing next to strange crystal formations that looked like tall, glowing trees. The crystals were drawn in purple and pink colors, and they seemed to be growing out of rocky ground. These crystals, Marcus said excitedly. I've seen them before. They're luminar crystals. They only grow on 3 worlds in the known galaxy. Ambassador Vex looked at the drawing with his mechanical eyes. Even if this child has drawn her mother's location, those 3 worlds are all in different sectors. It would take months to search them all, and 2 of those worlds are mining colonies, Trade Minister Colton added. The working conditions there are difficult. Many workers do not survive long. Sarah knelt down and hugged Kira gently. The little girl was still crying, but she held onto Sarah like she was the only safe thing in the universe. Marcus. Sarah said quietly, tell me about those 3 worlds. Dr. Webb activated his computer tablet and showed Sarah a star map. The first is Kepler 440b. It's a mining world controlled by the Hegemony Collective. Very dangerous. The second is New Montana, which is a human mining colony. And the third is Zirion Prime, which is abandoned now. If Kira's mother was sold as a worker, she would most likely be on one of the active mining worlds, Sarah said. Thinking out loud, Commander Zara made a sound that was like a sigh. Captain Chen, you are not thinking logically, even if this child's mother is alive, even if she is on one of those worlds, the chances of finding her among thousands of workers are tiny. Maybe, Sarah said, standing up with Kira still in her arms. But that doesn't mean we don't try. Ambassador Vex's mechanical voice became more stern. Captain, the Galactic Council will not support this search. We cannot waste resources on impossible missions. Then we'll do it ourselves, Sarah replied firmly. Trade Minister Colton's eyes blinked rapidly. The human government will not provide funding for such an operation. We don't need government funding, Sarah said. We have our own ship, our own crew, and our own determination. Dr. Webb smiled and put his hand on Sarah's shoulder. Count me in, Captain. I want to help Kira find her mother. Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. If we're going on an impossible mission to reunite a family, then you can count on me too. Behind Tom. Specialist Jake Miller nodded eagerly. The whole crew wants to help, Captain. We didn't become rescue workers to follow safe, logical rules. Ambassador Vex looked around at the humans with what might have been confusion. You are all willing to risk your lives and spend your own resources for one child and one missing adult. Sarah looked down at Kira, who had stopped crying and was listening to everything with wide, hopeful eyes. Ambassador, that's what makes us human. We don't abandon family, even when it's not logical. But the odds of success are very low, Commander Zara pointed out. Maybe, Sarah said with a smile. But the odds of us giving up are 0. That night, after the alien officials had left in frustration, Sarah sat with Kira as the little girl went to sleep. Kira held onto Sarah's hand and whispered in broken English, "You find Mama. Promise?" Sarah squeezed Kira's small hand gently. "I promise, little one. We'll bring your mama home." As Kira drifted off to sleep, Sarah looked out at the stars and began planning their impossible mission. Dr. Webb was right. There were 3 worlds where luminar crystals grew. Logic said they should start with New Montana, the human colony, because it would be easiest to search. But Sarah had a feeling about Kepler 442b, the dangerous mining world controlled by the Hegemony Collective. It was exactly the kind of place where slavers would sell prisoners to work until they died. Tomorrow, they would begin their search. For one woman among billions of stars, other species called it impossible. Sarah called it Tuesday. The morning hope would fly again, carrying hope across the galaxy for a little girl who just wanted her mama back. Kepler 440 to be looked like a nightmare world from space. The planet's surface was covered in dark clouds that swirled like angry storms. Through the clouds, Sarah could see the orange glow of mining operations burning day and night. The planet never slept, and neither did the workers trapped on its surface. "Captain, I'm getting readings of massive industrial activity," Jake reported from his sensor station aboard the Morning Hope. "There are at least 50 mining facilities down there, and each one has hundreds of workers." Sarah stared at the planet through the ship's window. Finding Kira's mother here would be like looking for one specific grain of sand on a beach. But she had made a promise to a little girl, and humans kept their promises. "Any response to our communication requests?" Sarah asked. Tom shook his head. "The Hegemony Collective refuses to talk to us. They said our request for prisoner lists violates their trade agreements. They won't even let us land legally." Dr. Webb joined them on the bridge, carrying a tablet full of research. "I've been studying the Hegemony's mining operations, Sarah. The conditions down there are terrible. Workers from dozens of different species, all forced to work in poisonous atmosphere. Most of them don't live longer than 6 months. Sarah felt her heart sink. If Kira's mother had been here for months already, she might already be too late. But she pushed that dark thought away. There has to be another way to get down there, actually. Jake said quietly, "I might have an idea. I've been monitoring their communications. They need equipment inspectors to check their mining machines. If someone could pose as an inspector, that's incredibly dangerous," Tom warned. "If they catch someone lying about their identity, the Hegemony doesn't just arrest people. They make them disappear." Sarah was already making up her mind. What would an equipment inspector need? Jake pulled up information on his screen. Official papers, technical knowledge about mining equipment, and he paused. They would need to speak at least basic Hegemony standard and understand mining safety codes. "I can do that," Sarah said firmly. "I studied engineering before I became a ship captain, and I've learned enough alien languages over the years." Dr. Webb looked worried. "Sarah, you'll be completely alone down there. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to help you. Then, we make sure nothing goes wrong," Sarah replied. She turned to Tom. "I need you to create false inspection papers. Make them look perfect. Already working on it," Tom said, his fingers flying over his computer. "But Captain, even if you get inside the mining facilities, how will you find Kira's mother among thousands of workers?" Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "The same way humans have always found lost family members. I'll talk to people, I'll listen to their stories, and I'll never give up." 3 days later, Sarah stood on the landing platform of Mining Station Alpha 7, wearing the gray uniform of a Hegemony equipment inspector. The air was thick and hard to breathe, even with her breathing mask round her. She could see workers from many different species moving like ghosts through the industrial complex. The station manager, a large creature with 4 arms and red eyes, greeted her with suspicion. "Inspector Chen, your papers seem to be in order, but we weren't expecting an inspection this month. Random inspections," Sarah replied in perfect Hegemony standard, trying to sound bored and official. "New safety protocols from headquarters. I need to check all equipment in sectors C through F." The manager grumbled but led her into the facility. What Sarah saw inside made her sick to her stomach. Workers moved through narrow tunnels, carrying heavy equipment, their faces covered with masks to protect them from poisonous gases. Many of them looked very sick, and some could barely walk. "The workers look unwell," Sarah commented carefully. "Mining is hard work. the manager replied without caring. The weak ones don't last long. We get new workers every month. Sarah's heart broke, but she kept her face emotionless. She began her inspection, moving through the facility and checking equipment. But her real mission was to observe the workers and listen for any clues about Kira's mother. During her lunch break, Sarah sat in the workers' eating area. She had brought extra food rations, which she shared with some of the thinner workers. Slowly, they began to trust her enough to talk. "Inspector," said an old Altarian worker, his blue skin now gray from illness, "you seem different from the other inspectors. You actually care about us." Sarah leaned closer. "I'm looking for someone, a Zephyrian woman who might have been brought here several months ago. She has a daughter who misses her very much." The workers around the table looked at each other with surprise. One of them, a young Centauri male, whispered, "There's a Zephyrian woman in Section D. Her name is Vera. But, Inspector, she is very sick. The doctors say she won't live much longer." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Can you tell me more about her? She talks about her daughter sometimes," said a female worker from Proxima, a little girl named Kira. "Vera thinks her daughter is dead, and it has broken her heart." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes, but she held them back. "We're exactly in Section D, Tunnel 7. Level 3, the Altarian worker replied. "But Inspector, that section is very dangerous. The air there is poison, and only the strongest workers are sent there." Sarah thanked them and gave them the rest of her food. As she walked towards Section D, her heart was beating fast with hope and fear. She was so close to finding Kira's mother, but what if she was too late? Section D was darker and more dangerous than the rest of the facility. The air was so thick with poisonous gases that Sarah had to adjust her breathing mask to maximum protection. Workers moved slowly through the tunnels, their bodies bent with exhaustion and sickness. In Tunnel 7, Level 3, Sarah found her. Vera was smaller than Sarah had expected, and her blue Zephyrian skin was pale and sickly. She was sitting against a wall, coughing badly, her breathing shallow and difficult. But when Sarah looked into her eyes, she saw the same silver color as Kira's eyes. "Vera," Sarah said softly in the Zephyrian language. The woman looked up with surprise. "How do you know my name?" Sarah knelt down beside her, forgetting completely about her disguise as an inspector. "Vera, my name is Sarah. I have something very important to tell you." Vera's eyes filled with sadness. "If you are here to tell me to work harder, I cannot. I am too sick. I will probably die soon anyway." "No," Sarah said, taking Vera's thin hands in her own. "I'm here to tell you that your daughter is alive. Kira is safe, and she is waiting for you." For a moment, Vera stared at Sarah as if she couldn't understand the words. Then tears began flowing down her face. "Kira, my little Kira is alive." "Yes," Sarah said, her own voice breaking with emotion. "She's safe on our ship. She draws pictures of you every day. She keeps asking us to find her mama." Something amazing happened then. Vera, who had been dying slowly from despair and sickness, suddenly seemed to find new strength. She sat up straighter, and her breathing became easier. You came here just to find me?" Vera asked with wonder. "We promised Kira we would bring you home," Sarah replied. "And humans always keep their promises." Vera looked into Sarah's eyes and saw the truth there. For the first time in months, she smiled. "When can I see my daughter?" Sarah helped Vera stand up. "Right now, if you're strong enough to travel." As they prepared to leave the mining facility, Sarah realized that this rescue was about more than just one family. Looking around at all the other workers who were still trapped in this terrible place, she knew that her mission was far from over. "Vera," Sarah said as they walked toward the exit, "are there other families here? Other people who have been separated from their loved ones?" Vera nodded sadly. "Many. So many broken families. The slavers split us up on purpose to make us too sad to fight back." Sarah's jaw tightened with determination. "Then we're going to fix that. All of it." As they left the mining facility together, Sarah was already planning the next phase of their mission. They had found Kira's mother, but there were hundreds of other families that needed to be reunited. the impossible search had become something much bigger, a mission to give hope back to people who had lost everything. Sarah helped Vera walk slowly through the dark tunnels of the mining facility. Vera was weak, but her eyes were bright with hope for the first time in months. They were almost at the exit when Vera suddenly stopped. "Sarah," Vera whispered, grabbing Sarah's arm. "We cannot leave yet." Sarah looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean?" "We need to get you out of here before someone discovers who I really am." Vera pointed back toward the deeper tunnels. "There are children here, Sarah, young ones from many different species. They work in the most dangerous places because they are small and can fit in narrow spaces." Sarah felt her heart sink. She had been so focused on finding Vera that she hadn't thought about other innocent people who might be trapped here. "How many children?" Sarah asked quietly. "At least 30 that I know of," Vera replied. "Some are as young as Kira. They cry for their parents every night, just like my daughter cried for me." Sarah closed her eyes and thought quickly. Her original plan was simple: get Vera out quietly and return to the ship. But now she was faced with a choice that would change everything. "Vera, if we try to save the children too, it will be very dangerous. The guards will notice if 30 young workers suddenly disappear." Vera looked at Sarah with the same determined expression that Sarah had seen in little Kira's eyes. "Sarah, would you want someone to leave Kira behind if she was trapped here?" Sarah knew the answer immediately. "No, never. Then we cannot leave these children either." Vera said firmly, "I may be dying, but I will not save my own life by abandoning other people's children." Sarah smiled, understanding now why Kira was such a brave little girl. Her mother was incredibly courageous too. "All right," Sarah said, making her decision. "But if we're going to save everyone, we need help. Do you know which workers can be trusted?" Vera nodded. "Yes, there are good people here from many species. They have been waiting for someone to give them hope over the next 2 hours." Vera quietly spread the word to trusted workers. Throughout the facility, Sarah was amazed at how quickly the news traveled. Workers who had been hopeless and broken suddenly began moving with purpose. The plan was simple but dangerous. During the shift change at midnight, when the guards were distracted, groups of workers would move toward the main exit. Sarah would use her fake inspector credentials to convince the guards that she was conducting an emergency evacuation drill. But as they prepared to leave, alarms suddenly began ringing throughout the facility. "Attention all workers," announced a loud voice over the speakers. "We have discovered a fake inspector on the premises. All workers must report to their stations immediately. Anyone found moving without permission will be severely punished." Sarah's heart raced. Someone had discovered her real identity. "We need to go now," she told Vera urgently. But Vera shook her head. "If we run now, they will catch us before we reach the exit, and they will punish everyone who helped us." Sarah looked around at the workers who had gathered near them. There were humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, Centaurians, and species she didn't even recognize. All of them were looking at her with hope, waiting for her to tell them what to do. "There's another way," said Marcus, an old human worker who had been trapped here for over a year. "The mining tunnels connect to the old transport system. If we could reach the loading docks, there might be ships there. That route goes through the most dangerous part of the facility," warned Gina, a young Altarian woman. "The air there is poison, and the tunnels are unstable." Sarah looked at all the faces around her, workers who had suffered for so long, children who deserved to see their families again, and Vera, who was willing to risk everything to save others. "Then we go together," Sarah said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We watch out for each other. We help those who are weak, and we don't leave anyone behind." The group of escaped workers moved through the facility like a family taking care of each other. When someone stumbled, others helped them up. When the air became too poisonous, those with better breathing equipment shared with those who needed it. Sarah stayed at the front, using her knowledge of the facility's layout to guide them through the safest routes. Vera, despite her weakness, helped carry one of the youngest children, a small proximate boy who reminded her of Kira. As they reached the transport docks, they could hear guard ships flying overhead, searching for them with bright lights. There, Marcus pointed to a large cargo ship. That one looks like it still has fuel. But as they approached the ship, guards appeared from behind the loading equipment. Sarah counted at least 20 armed guards surrounding them. "Stop right there," shouted the guard captain, a large creature with 4 arms and angry red eyes. "You are all under arrest for theft of company property." "We're not property," Sarah said bravely. Stepping forward, "We're living beings with the right to be free." The guard captain laughed cruelly. "Not according to hegemony law. You will all return to work or face much worse punishments." Just then, the sound of ship engines filled the air. Sarah looked up to see the Morning Hope descending from the clouds, along with 2 other human rescue ships. "Captain Chen," came Tom's voice over her communication device. "We thought you might need some backup." Dr. Webb's voice followed. "We brought the New Dawn medical ship and the Bright Star transport vessel. We're ready to take everyone home." The guards looked up at the human ships with uncertainty. They were outnumbered now. "This is illegal interference with hegemony operations," the guard captain shouted into his radio. "This is a humanitarian rescue mission," Sarah replied firmly. "These people are coming with us." What happened next surprised everyone. Workers from other parts of the facility began appearing at the docks. Word had spread throughout the mining station that someone was finally standing up to the guards. Hundreds of workers from dozens of species walked toward the human ships. "We want to go to," called out an elderly Centaurian woman. "We want to be free." "And us," said a group of young Altarian workers. "We want to see our families again." The guard captain looked around nervously. His 20 guards were now facing hundreds of determined workers and 3 human rescue ships. "Stand down," came a new voice over the radio. It was the station manager. "Let them go. We cannot fight the entire human rescue fleet." As the workers boarded the human ships, Vera walked beside Sarah toward the Morning Hope. "Sarah," Vera said quietly, "you could have just taken me and left quietly. Why did you choose to save everyone?" Sarah looked back at the children who were now laughing and playing as they boarded the ships, the first joy they had felt in months. "Because, Vera, that's what Kira would want her mother to do. She would want you to help other children find their families too." Vera smiled and squeezed Sarah's hand. "You understand what it means to be a parent, even though you don't have children of your own." "Today I learned that being human means we're all family," Sarah replied. "And families don't leave each other behind." As the 3 human ships lifted off from Kepler 440b, they carried not just Vera back to her daughter, but over 300 liberated workers who would finally have the chance to find their own families and start new lives. The impossible rescue had become something much bigger, a statement to the galaxy that some things were more important than profit, more valuable than efficiency, and more powerful than fear. But Sarah knew that their real work was just beginning. There were thousands of other facilities like this one, and millions of other families that needed to be reunited. The main hall of the human outpost New Dawn had never seen so much joy. Freed workers from dozens of different species were hugging their loved ones, sharing food, and telling stories of their rescue. Children who had been separated from their parents for months were finally safe in their families' arms again. But in the center of all this happiness, one small figure stood very still, staring at the entrance door. Little Kira wore a clean blue dress that Dr. Webb had found for her, and her silver hair was brushed and shining. She had been standing there for 20 minutes, waiting. "She knows," Dr. Webb said quietly to Captain Sarah Chen as they watched Kira from across the room. "Somehow, she knows her mother is coming." Sarah smiled as she saw Tom and Jake helping the last group of rescue workers off the transport ships. Children always know when their parents are near. The entrance door opened, and Sarah's heart filled with happiness as she saw Vera walking slowly into the hall. The Zephyrian woman was still weak from her time in the mines, but her eyes were bright and searching. She looked around at all the people, clearly overwhelmed by the noise and activity. Then Kira saw her. "Mama," Kira screamed, her voice carrying above all the other sounds in the hall. She ran across the room faster than Sarah had ever seen her move, her small feet barely touching the ground. Vera's face lit up with pure joy as she saw her daughter running toward her. She fell to her knees and opened her arms wide, catching Kira as the little girl crashed into her embrace. "Mom, I'm back. He saved me," Kira cried in her own language, pointing at Sarah while still holding tightly to her mother. Then she switched to the English she had been learning. "She saved me, Mama. Sarah promised to find you." Vera held her daughter close, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. She just held Kira and breathed in the familiar scent of her child's hair, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her chest. Finally, Vera looked up at Sarah, who was standing nearby with tears in her own eyes in perfect standard English. Vera said words that would change how the galaxy thought about humans forever. "You brought me back to my mother." Sarah looked confused. "Vera, you're the mother. We brought you back to your daughter." Vera shook her head, still holding Kira close. "No, Sarah. When I was in that terrible place, I forgot how to be a mother. I forgot how to hope, how to love, how to believe that good things could happen. You didn't just save my life. You brought me back to myself. You helped me remember that I am Kira's mother." The entire hall had grown quiet as people stopped their conversations to listen. Even the children had stopped playing, sensing that something very important was being said. "You could have just taken Kira and given her a new family," Vera continued, her voice growing stronger. "That would have been logical, efficient, safe. But instead, you did something impossible. You crossed the galaxy, risked your lives, and refused to give up until a family was whole again." Dr. Webb stepped forward, wiping his own eyes. "Vera, we did what any decent people would do." Vera looked around at all the humans in the room. Sarah, Tom, Jake, Dr. Webb, and the crews from the other rescue ships. "No, Dr. Webb, other species calculate costs and benefits. They make logical decisions based on numbers and efficiency. But humans follow their hearts even when it makes no sense." Ambassador Vex suddenly appeared in the doorway, followed by Commander Zera and Trade Minister Colm. The three alien officials looked around at the celebration with their usual cold expressions. "Captain Chen," Ambassador Vex announced in his mechanical voice, "the Galactic Council has received reports of your unauthorized military action against the Hegemony Collective." The happy atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. Workers who had just been rescued looked worried, afraid they might be sent back to the mines. Sarah stepped forward calmly. "It wasn't a military action, Ambassador. It was a humanitarian rescue mission. You violated 3 different trade agreements." Trade Minister Colin said with his eyes blinking angrily. "You interfered with legal business operations. You stole valuable workers." Little Kira, who was still holding her mother's hand, looked up at the alien officials with brave eyes. "They didn't steal anybody. They brought families back together." Commander Zera looked down at Kira with surprise. "Child, you do not understand the complexity of interstellar law. I understand that Sarah promised to find my mama, and she kept her promise," Kira replied simply. "That's all that matters." Vera stood up slowly, still holding Kira's hand. "Commanders, may I say something?" Ambassador Vex nodded curtly. "Speak." "Before I was captured, I worked as a communications specialist on Heaven's Rest. I translated languages and helped different species understand each other. I thought I knew how the galaxy worked." Vera looked around at all the free workers in the room. "But I learned something in those mines that I had never understood before." "What did you learn?" Commander Zera asked, sounding genuinely curious. "I learned that there are 2 kinds of intelligence in this galaxy," Vera replied. "There's the intelligence that calculates costs and makes logical decisions. And there's the intelligence that understands what really matters: family, hope, love, and never giving up on each other." She gestured towards Sarah and the other humans. "Your species may be more advanced in technology. You may have bigger ships and stronger weapons. But humans have something that makes them the most intelligent species in the galaxy." "What is that?" Trade Minister Colin asked skeptically. They understand that every life matters, every family is worth saving, every child deserves to be with their parents. Vera's voice became stronger as she spoke. You call it inefficient. I call it the greatest wisdom in the universe. Ambassador Vex was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, the council will need to discuss this situation while you discuss. Sarah said firmly, we'll keep doing what we do best, bringing families home. As the alien officials left, the celebration in the hall resumed with even more energy than before. But now it wasn't just about one family being reunited. It was about a new understanding spreading across the galaxy. Over the following weeks, the story of Kira and Vera spread to every star system. Other species began to understand that human illogical behavior was actually a different kind of wisdom. Requests for help began arriving from across the galaxy, families asking humans to find their missing loved ones. The human outpost New Dawn became the center of a new movement. Ships from many species began arriving, not to criticize the humans, but to learn from them. They wanted to understand how a species could be so inefficient and yet so successful at creating hope. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck, watching ships come and go. The outpost had grown into a small city, with facilities for refugees, medical centers, and coordination offices for rescue missions across the galaxy. Kira ran up to Sarah. Now healthy and happy, speaking fluent English, Sarah, Mama said, I can start learning to be a rescue worker when I'm older. Sarah knelt down and hugged the little girl. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Kira nodded seriously. I want to help other children find their mamas and papas, just like you helped me. Sarah looked out at the stars and smiled. The galaxy was still full of problems, still full of suffering, but now it was also full of hope, because more and more people were learning the most important lesson of all. No one gets left behind. Not on a human's watch. A simple sign hung by the main entrance. Written in dozens of languages, everyone deserves to go home. And for the first time in galactic history, that wasn't just a nice saying. It was a promise that would be kept.